What do you think was the big change? What was it think was the big problem you were solving for?
The biggest problem in most training that involves an individual contributor is that management has a strategy. AI is a great equalizer. I said on a stage 2 years ago, and I was only quoting Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, who is infinitely more intelligent than I am. He said that if he had children now, he would never encourage them to go into coding because the coding is going to be done through prompting and AI by 2025 is what he said.
I'm curious about what inflection point, what was something that has triggered you to say, okay, this needs to change?
I think that one of the biggest things for me
So welcome to Ideas of Scale. In this series, like I was saying, we explore ideas for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and see what's happening in the world. Today we have Hilmon, amazing. You're going to introduce yourself, but as a coach, as an investor, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a Miami scene changer, game changer. I would like to, first of all, thank you for sitting down with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's important. And I want to deep dive in things that are non-conventional maybe, or things that are happening as we speak. Everybody's talking AI, everybody's talking about, but in your different roles as to what you seen that has changed. So maybe you can, in a blurb, three things about you.
Top three things about me? Any three things?
There you go.
Okay. I love the ocean. I am insanely curious. I'm one of those people who's like, but why? But why? But why? You know, most people stop at age 3 asking why about everything consistently. I find myself digging past layers and layers and layers and layers and layers until finally either no one has the answer or I've exhausted my curiosity, which is seldom. What's another thing about me? Geez, I am a bit of a, I don't know what the word would be. It's not a polymath because I'm not that smart, but I'm a poly jobs person. There are lots of things that I like to do. It's amazing because sometimes people list off the things. They'll say, oh, VC and also private equity and then, go-to-market strategy and then, doing a foundation and this, that, and the other. They all dovetail though. They all kind of have a thesis behind them, I think, at this point in my life. They may not have started that way, but it's not quite as exhaustive as it might seem.
There you go. But in that curiosity and that path has driven you from early stages to the go-to-market to coach. Tell us that path. What came one to the next? What led that progress?
Yeah, so I think curiosity led everything. So I started out, I was one of those kids, I don't know if you've ever seen like a backgammon game. You ever seen backgammon? You know how it comes in a thing that looks like a briefcase?
Yes.
Well, when I was a child, we had backgammon in the house. I dumped all the pieces out of it. And my father was a business person, and I would go to his desk in his office and grab his legal pad and stick it in that little briefcase, and I would go from room to room with my stuffed animals, coaching them, advising them, teaching them, rallying my troops, pretending that I was running companies. My father was a professor and program director at Kellogg, and so, all this master's in management stuff, all these books were around the house. I was reading like Theory Z when I was like, 13 years old, not understanding much of it, but pretending to. So I just always had this passion for business. And I think that, starting young as an entrepreneur, my first business was, shoveling snow and mowing lawns and raking leaves in Chicago. And then, that builds to something else, running an agency for friends who were then shoveling snow and raking leaves and all of this sort of thing. So my curiosity about business is really what began the journey. And I think that the entry points for me, I always say I'm a terrible employee. I'm lucky that entrepreneurship exists because otherwise I would probably be unemployed. Whenever I'm an employee, I'm constantly kind of thinking of like, how would I make this business my own? And what would I do that's smarter? Not that it is smarter, but that's just the way my mind works, right? So I think that necessity is the mother of invention. And so therefore, I've had to start companies and been fortunate enough, most of the time, I've had plenty of failures as well, but more successes than failures, I guess, at this point in my life. Has afforded me the opportunity to be able to engage with people and do things that contribute to their success. But I think the startup world with respect to technology, if we talk about that part of my life, I was fortunate enough to work with startups early on. And I think, and I'm being completely transparent here, I think because they were the only ones naive enough to hire me into roles that I was not qualified for. Truly, at like a Fortune 500 company or larger companies, they have a great vetting process. They have people who know. When you're dealing with a couple founders and they're bringing in someone to be a CRO, if they're technical founders, they really don't know. I mean, now probably people do, but back then they didn't necessarily know what a CRO is supposed to do. And so I was able to, through some industriousness, get the role and then figure it out and develop relationships and become resourceful and have some success in some of those roles. So I started there, and then you build a certain level of proof of your capabilities, and then larger companies are interested in you. Have a couple exits, and you know how that ecosystem works, where the VCs that you exited with are now trying to pull you into other organizations because you're a trusted entity and they know your type of work and your work style, and they want to see repeated growth. And then once you're in that flow, I often say, the opportunities come when you're in the river. You can't experience them standing on the riverbank, right? But if you're in the river, these things flow by you, and it's just, I'd say there's a lot of fortune. There's a lot of blessings in my life that have put me in position to be able to take advantage of some opportunities.
Well, that's a tricky part. That's you might have the open opportunities, but you took advantage of them.
Yes.
And that curiosity that led you to this space where you're at. So I'm curious about what inflection point. What was something that has triggered you to say, okay, this needs to change?
I think that one of the biggest things for me coming at this, I dropped out of like 3 different colleges. I'm not a person that, not because I don't like to learn. Obviously, a curious person likes to learn, but the way instruction was done as I was coming through school was not the way that I am, that I'm most adaptive to learning, right? It just didn't work for me. I think probably now I may be diagnosed as ADHD, or would have been back then, or something like that. You know what I mean? But they didn't have the acronyms back then, which is probably a good thing, But I couldn't sit and listen to a lecture. It just didn't work for me. I was like a hands-on person, a kinesthetic person who wants to get in and do it, and very visual person. So someone just talking for an hour and a half just like didn't register for me. So I kept leaving kind of disgruntled and then starting companies. And I think that an inflection point for me that came in my career, having been on the sales and revenue side of a number of companies, I got to a point where after I left, the curiosity, again, drove me to try to understand, how does this become repeatable? How do you consistently build a sales team that performs? How do you consistently do a go-to-market strategy that's going to be impactful across different industries, across different verticals, dealing with different personas and different types of products? Like, there's got to be a system to this. There's got to be a science. And so I took some time off to really just kind of invest in that, and discovered an organization called Sandler, which is a world-renowned, very, very well-recognized sales training firm, where I became a partner in a firm. And the intent there was for me to try to figure out how this all works in a way that's not just, the salespeople are the ones who are like charming and aggressive, or they've been athletes and they're just competitive and they're chest bumping pros. Like, that's not true. That can't possibly be true, right?
Okay.
So in doing that, I began to study the science. And in studying the science, I developed I began to learn a methodology. The inflection point, getting to your question, was that we were at this point of really precipitous change in technology, where a lot of what had been done before, when you think of like IBM and Xerox and all of like the 1960s to 80s, these salespeople would go out in their suits and they would have their data, and you had to have a conversation with a salesperson to understand what your competitors were doing. All of those barriers dropped when the internet came around, like when the sophisticated, 2.0 internet came around, right? Where things began to be crowdsourced and information began to be shared. And like, think about now, you can go to something like a G2 Crowd, you can go get a demo on a website, you can go to LinkedIn and find out who's using what. There's so many sources of information that the inflection point that shifted me into developing my own methodologies and writing books was realizing that traditional sales and go-to-market strategy wasn't working anymore. It was old. It wasn't adaptive to a new generation of people who were sellers. It wasn't adaptive to a generation of people who were buyers. It wasn't adaptive to SaaS, which exists in the cloud. It just, and there was nothing really addressing that pivot. So that's where I took, some time off after leaving Sandler. I spent about a year, kind of hopefully hoping not to be sued really by going right back into the business, right? But took a year off. I call it my dining table, PhD in all things sales. I had books that dated from like 1890 all the way to the present. I've studied every single sales and go-to-market strategy methodology pretty much known to humankind in English. I say in English because there are probably some really good other ones
Okay.
in other languages, right?
Obviously.
But I'm monolingual. And then I took what was good. I took what was valuable. I took what I had learned over 10 years of training in Sandler and being in rooms with people and working and coaching CEOs and trying to get teams to adopt things and developing long tail and ROI. I took the things that I knew would be successful, and then I created the things that were missing. I filled in the blind spots with some things that I knew would actually be impactful. So that became kind of like the tipping point from being a student to actually becoming someone who is creating and really extending the knowledge base and the intelligence around go-to-market strategy and sales management.
And in that sense, it's amazing that you dissected many frameworks and created your own.
Yeah.
Assembled your own. And that idea, what do you think was the big change? What was you think was the big problem you were solving for at that time?
Love that question. The biggest problem to solve for was finding a way to simplify. There's a huge problem, right? The biggest problem in most training that involves an individual contributor is that management has a strategy. Management has a North Star, whether that's, we're going up market or we're going to raise revenue, we're going to do this, that, whatever it might be. They got this thing, right? What seldom happens is the evidence of that strategy taking place on a tactical level on a daily basis. There's a black box, right? You've got leadership here, you've got management that's been told what to do, and then you've got frontline management that's kind of trying to task and distill this thing down into what is Gabby going to be doing today, right? Which is very difficult to do. In the same vein, being able to train folks on a methodology that management knows is adhering to their North Star, but tactically an individual contributor understands what I'm doing today that is contributing to that from a tactical level is the challenge. So what I was trying to do was twofold. One, simplify things in a way where there would be complete transparency, where someone up in the C-suite could walk the sales floor or talk to somebody in customer success or in enablement or whatever it might be, sales engineers, et cetera, and see the evidence of what they are driving for being adhered to. If you think about a factory floor, factory might say we're trying to increase productivity, we're trying to increase safety, and we want to make sure that we have a certain number of cans of soup that are coming out of the thing, right? Well, a C-level executive could walk that factory floor and she could see it in motion. She could see, oh, wow, Hilmon's being safe. He's wearing the safety goggles. He's following the guidelines. We've got yellow signs up that say that you shouldn't do this and everyone's within their frame. I don't know how factories work, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
let's pretend.
You get the evidence.
That's it. You get the evidence. There was no evidence before. So what we've created with the frameworks that we use and what we've developed through closed loop and triangle selling is the ability for that evidence and transparency to exist. And the last thing is that training is only as good as its adherence. And there are a number of things that we've learned, we meaning the world has learned about adult learners with respect to spaced repetition. We don't learn things at the kickoff and then expect to apply it for the rest of the year. There needs to be some spaced repetition. There needs to be coaching tied to the things that I've learned. And you're only going to coach something that you believe you're not an imposter with respect to the knowledge base. So therefore, we have to extend the level of education for the folks who are frontline managers. And then for the folks who are applying it, you can't expect someone to just remember a giant corpus of content. Give them acronyms, give them easy means of being able to trigger their recognition of what they're supposed to be doing at any given point in their process. And that's the only way you're going to have success.
Okay, and talk about people. In terms of culture, in terms of people, I mean, you're talking about systems, you talk about dashboards, I believe.
Yeah.
You talk about the super innovative framework that you're using.
Sure.
The people component, the talent component.
Most
How
important.
do you deal with that?
It's a good question. I would have more hair if I had an answer to that question.
Right.
The people component, the best way to deal with it, first off, is to hire well. Right?
Okay.
A lot of what we do when closed loop goes into an organization to evaluate whether or not there's an engagement opportunity is we do an assessment. It's a 4S assessment, which stands for strategy, system, staff, and skills, right? The staff and skills, incredibly important. Do you have the right people in the right seats on the bus? I'm certainly not the first person to say that, right?
Okay.
And then what are the gaps with respect to their skills as it relates to the job function, their job to be done, and the thing that they're supposed to be achieving. I'm going back to systems again. But when you think about people, there's a lot that's transpired. People say I'm older than I look. So I've been managing people for almost 40 years, right?
Okay.
A pretty long time. And a lot has changed. There are different generations in the workforce. that have different experiences. You know, it's different working with someone who has grown up with a phone or a tablet or a screen in their hand.
Right.
Their chosen method of communication might be different. Their proclivities with respect to like tone and the amount of feedback and how feedback is delivered could be very different than someone who's been in the workforce for 30 years, right? You also just can't paint in broad strokes. You have individuals who have different energies and have different goals. I always say that what's most critical is for you as an organization to clearly understand a couple things, who you really are. Right? It's like if you're dating. If you don't know who you are and the things that you can tolerate and the things that you might be able to adapt to and those things that you absolutely will not, then you're going to constantly be on this cycle of like, you know, love affair, then it falls apart, love affair, then it falls apart. You know what I mean? As opposed to having a consistent rap towards building a strong relationship. I think it's very much the same with companies. Companies don't realize that they are living, breathing entities that have culture, they have an impact, they have an emotional kind of tenor. I can think of different organizations that I work with now. When I walk into their offices, you can feel a culture. You know, there are some cultures that are just very icy, very get to it, very like, almost, I would say, militaristic, and it works for them, and they know it, and they hire people who thrive in that kind of structure, and they want merit, you know, kind of acknowledgements and things like that. Then there's some cultures that you go into. I'm thinking of a rideshare company in particular that has like fuzzy pink shag carpeting hanging from the ceiling, a DJ in the front room when you walk in. It's very chill vibes and everybody's kind of fluid and nobody has like a specific area that they work in and they're hoteling all over the place. That would drive me nuts. I like to know this is Hilmon's desk. This is where I come sit every day. You know what I mean? What are you doing with my stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but in terms of, and you dealt with people like 40, I could say 40 years already. What's the one thing, one question that you would say, okay, this triggers or absolutely yes, absolutely no. And this
for a hire?
Yeah, for hire, for team, for being a partner and founder.
Yeah, so I think they're all different. I know that's not the best answer.
Okay.
It does depend, which is what, you know, consultants equivocate. That's
say,
what we do.
Yes, it depends.
Pay me and I'll let you find out. No, but I'll answer that in I'll tell you how I go about arriving at what that question should be for each organization. Once you go through a little bit of a matrix of understanding the things that you are looking for in an interview, like not the chronological stuff, not the not the
LinkedIn
pedigree.
profile says,
who cares, right?
Okay.
That doesn't matter. I'm looking for evidence, right? And when I say evidence, it's not you bringing me evidence. It's I need to experience this of you in the conversation. So let me give you an example. If you're hiring someone who manages managers, right? One of the things that could be very important for them is understanding is what their philosophy is with respect to strong leadership, right? You could ask that question. I could say, Gabby, so what do you think? You're going to give me your textbooky answer. That sounds really great. Or I could say...
Or what I want to hear.
Or exactly, precisely, which I've already spelled out in the job description, right? Well, someone who gets after it and it's like, come on, right? Yeah. Or I could say like, so Gabby, you've had managers before. Is there one in particular that you're just really fond of that you felt you really grew from? And you'd say, yeah, I remember when I was working with Ale, she was fantastic, this, that, and the other. And I'd say, so what about her made her stick out in your head as someone that you think just really had a strong impact on your trajectory? The things you start listing, obviously to me, correlate to things that you think are very valuable in leadership. That's one way to glean it, right? In addition to that, I would say, I ask people this all the time who are in roles where they have to provide instruction and clear guidance. Mm-hmm. A lot of people in interviews, I think, make the mistake of trying to see how much you've researched my company and how well you can articulate to me the things that you would need to know in my company. Like, that's not fair. Right. You have a wealth of experience that comes from somewhere else. So I would say, hey, Gabby, what do you love to do for fun? Suppose you said I love to ski, right? I'd say, that's cool. Let's pretend I'm someone who is trying to get into skiing. Walk me through the steps I would need to get on my first bunny slope and some guidance around how I would want to get down that hill the first time. Right? Yeah, exactly. It's all about the après ski, Hilmon. It's not about that. Yeah. But that gives me clarity on how you, with something that you love, articulate a step-by-step, your depth of knowledge around it. And then the last question I would ask you is I'd say, so if we were out there together, what do you think you'd be coaching me on? What are the things you've observed, either in your own experience or working with other people, that are the things that I probably don't know? And how would you do it? This gives me clarity around how you coach and your insightfulness into there being a methodology around something.
So we advise a lot of family businesses, and that's one of the things that they fall in love with the person, with the idea of the person that they're trying to hire.
Oh, always.
And when you sift through those type of questions and maybe saying not textbook answers, just how would they react?
Yes.
And with evidence. I love that idea.
Yes. Can I add to that?
Yes.
Okay, so two more things in that vein. First off, we are all hoping, hiring people, interviewing people is not fun. I don't know anybody who enjoys that unless it's maybe like
Some
a talent professional somewhere. Okay, maybe.
Not me.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I think most of us are hoping that the person we're talking to is going to be the one so that we can get on with whatever it is that they're supposed to be filling in the organization, right? I think it's so important before then to put together some sort of means of measurement before you've actually had the interview, so that as you're scoring the interview, you're scoring it against a rubric that you decided without bias. I mean, we're all biased to a certain degree, but without the bias of the individual, right?
Right.
The second thing, I'll give you another really quick example. There is an organization, much like the rideshare organization that I was telling you about, that had just a really kind of chaotic culture, but was really diligent about ensuring timelines and deadlines were met. And one of the challenges that they experienced was hiring people who became too social because the opportunities were there, because it was very loose. And I said, okay, so it sounds like you need somebody who can effectively be collaborative, but also kind of shut down and go, I got to get work to do. They said, yeah. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. In the interview process, we're going to have somebody come in. You're going to give them a half-hour project that they need to complete while they're here to come back to present to us that pertains to the role, but we're going to sit them out there and we're going to send people at them to interrupt them during the process. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, just send friendly people to come over and go, oh, Gabby, I heard you're interviewing. That's so cool. So I've been here for about 4 or 5 years, and see if Gabby has the wherewithal to go, I would love to talk to you. I've got about 28 minutes to finish this thing. Can we catch up after my interview? Because I'd love to hear more about your experience. Because someone will tell you, how do you work in a complicated, oh, I love it. I thrive in an environment that, but maybe you don't. Maybe you become Chatty Hilmon and you can't get away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Are you done?
All right.
No, but absolutely. I think in a way of hiring, of getting to a level of understanding how that person or that could fit. I mean, Amazon, Jeff Bezos would say either it's a right fit or the system would spit the person out. And that idea certainly helps. But we do have entrepreneurs, you advise entrepreneurs, you advise, and they as well need to have some training, big time trainings in terms of how to deal with people.
Oh, yeah.
This generation, what do you think?
Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about alpha? Or are we talking about Z
AI
or millennials? We've got so many
the
now.
AI
that
generation
now.
No, beyond millennials and deeper and the immediacy and I've seen certain level. I don't know about you, but hiring that type of talent, it's tough because they're used to changing jobs as they change apps.
Absolutely.
And they want immediate and they want this reaction. So what's your take?
It's all different. I'm sure people were saying this when Gen X was coming up. They're like, oh, these people, and then their tech
Z,
stuff. And like, you know what I mean? Yeah. We didn't get to grouse about the millennials long enough, though. I feel like that was just short-lived.
Yeah.
I think that everything's adaptive. It all comes back to, this. You said the people piece. There are only certain things that motivate people. Was it Daniel Pink that wrote that book? Oh, it's not called Motivation, but there's a great book that he wrote a number of years ago. It's probably old now, but the thesis remains the same, which is that we all have things that motivate us to want to belong, to want to succeed, to want us to have autonomy, to want us to have life purpose, Maslow's hierarchy, things like that. Those haven't changed. From an evolutionary perspective, we aren't that far away from, where we were, 5,000 years ago, pretty much. So I think that what's critical is being able to understand the level to which your organization is flexible and how it flexes to adapt to that interest. So specifically, what I'm finding now, I do a lot of interviews for our clients, that might be management level interviews. Even, early stage folks will interview early level just, to weigh in with our expertise on this. One thing that I find in younger folks in the workforce is that there's more altruism. It's like,
more purpose-driven.
What is the purpose?
Yeah.
What are we really doing here? Mm-hmm. It's not just making widgets. It's not just making money. It's not world domination. There's a little bit of disenchantment with the way things have been governed to date, with big tech, with big pharma, with big government, with all of that stuff. And so understanding what the motivation is of an individual at an individual level, I think is what correlates to creating a successful experience for that employee, that person inside the organization, and to that level of potential retention. I think that early on, we might have conversations around like, where would you like to be? Now I think it's 2 years, right? In 2 years, where do you see yourself, right? Great. How often are you revisiting that trajectory once they're on board and ensuring that the work they're doing either is aligned with that or that you've articulated how it builds toward that? I think that that's what becomes a disconnect sometimes, is it's hard to see how this thing that I'm toiling at doing every day is actually contributing to my ability to get to where I'm trying to go.
Okay, imagine the type of setting that we're at. It's C-suite, boards, and that at that level. What do you see? What have you seen? I'm in branding, and you have a personal brand that you take care of. No, you do. You do a very good job.
Thank you.
In terms of at the board level, what do you see brand management or marketing or sales, and at that level, what have you seen? In my case, we've done many, but usually marketing is not at the C-suite level. Once we get in, we start driving the conversation. For us, what's not said is not known. So you have to get your word out, and internally, externally, and whatnot. What have you seen? Have you seen a shift in that space?
So I will tell you, I was once a CMO of an organization. This is many years ago. It was a web security company. Very difficult space because the folks who you're targeting are risk averse. They're difficult to find. They don't take chances on new technologies. Hard to make sexy. Hard to brand in a way that is very interesting. You know what I mean? And we're going to RSA conferences and just being like, yeah, here we are. But what was easy for me was that I was responsible for a website, collateral, trade show, exhibition and materials, maybe some swag that was like t-shirts or something like that. You know what I mean? Check the box, done. And as long as the logo was right, the colors were right, the initial messaging was accurate, pretty easy to manage, right? Right. Now, marketing, first of all, is just this beast. Like there used to just be kind of like broadcast communication / marketing. Like that was the thing, right? That's just what you did because it was
channels,
like, right. Now you've got so many channels to monitor. And you talked about me having a personal brand. Well, imagine me in an organization. I have a personal brand. I also have the organization's brand to be mindful of.
Right.
And now you've got to police that or allow for that. And of course, it's like a kind of nebulous of what you can and cannot ask an employee to do. You've got folks who are in sales development roles, which is really a sales role, top of funnel doing demand gen, hand-to-hand combat reaching out to people who are often managed by marketing now, right? Because it's not a sales opportunity yet. Therefore, why does the sales team want to deal with that mess? Like, let's just make marketing responsible for delivering leads.
Sales and marketing.
Right? Typical fight, right? Like, oh, it's not a marketing qualified lead. It's not a sales accepted lead. All of these sorts of things, right? That collective tension is great, but it is so busy now. And I think that when you get to the C-suite, unless someone, and how often is a CEO coming from the brand strategy side? Like very seldom, unless they have been somebody who is an entrepreneur who just has really developed brand, and now someone has brought them in to kind of be a brand shepherd. Usually this person has come from finance, this person has come from maybe engineering in a tech company, or this person has come from sales, right? So they don't have a huge lens on it, right?
Absolutely. That perspective is not
there, right?
Not there.
And then the other piece, which I think we are finally maybe getting away from in the brand and marketing perspective, I was having a conversation yesterday about this around attribution, right? Meaning that often marketing, they laugh at marketing saying, so what was the impact of that? What was the ROI of that trade show? It's like, oh, well, some people saw us and we got some leads, by zapping people as they walk by, right? But now I think that we have enough tools where there could be a more direct correlation to the impact that marketing is having. But when you get to brand, it's kind of like, well, now how do we measure that, right? So all this to say that the change is that it's busy, and because it's so busy, you kind of have to pick, unless you are a very well-resourced organization, you have to pick your lanes. You have to understand where you are, maybe early stage, this is impactful.
Why?
Fintech, for example, you lead the Fintech club here in Miami. critical for fintech to establish credibility and trust. Therefore, brand needs to be prominent. I'm not going to have transactions or trust something that I haven't heard of or just saw on Instagram. Not going to happen.
On this one.
Right? Right? You know what I mean? Absolutely critical. And actually, that greases the skids for a sales conversation.
Right.
In some other veins, the sales conversation, if I'm selling MCP servers to developers in organizations, then I may not need to do as much branding because they don't trust it anyway. So the question is, what are your goals? What are your resources? And then how do you prioritize? And what can you do with experts that will show you how to leverage your resources in a way that you're getting the greatest impact across all of these channels?
I usually, the way we work with CEOs at top level, and usually they're super low profile. And what we try to get is like, you need to get the word out internally.
That's right.
You're not going to be an influencer outside, maybe, but you need to be an influencer inside. And people need to understand what's going on. And we see that very often with entrepreneurs, and they're going super fast. They forget that they have. And for me, the philosophy is the organization is going to go at the speed of the slowest person.
That's right.
And so you need to level them up. But anyway, going and trying to close it in terms of having you here, super impressive experience. But more, I'm really, really impressed what you're doing in Miami space.
Oh, thank you.
I went to the Spark. I saw Ale leading and being a judge in there. I saw the spark on the people that were pitching even at the cocktail.
Magical, isn't it?
I do a lot of mentoring as well with
Yes.
Endeavor and Venezuela, with my country. I do a lot of that. And I just love the space when they say they get the aha moment. I'm on the branding side, on the marketing, on the communication side, and every time I get to that conversation, it's just like, okay, they engage.
Right.
Why Miami? Why? What do you see? I mean, what have you done? And it changes your face.
It does. It's so interesting. I've said this only to a very few people, that I did not realize until I moved to Miami how important geography, like the place, is to your personal sense of like mission and happiness. And I always thought like a place is just kind of a place. I even tried the nomad thing, did not work for me. Obviously, I can't work in chaos. So that was just terrible. I'm a person who's, a routine driven person. I spent 25 years in Chicago, 25 years in San Francisco. My wife and I lived in Milan for a little bit before moving here, and I've been here for 3 years. My family is from Florida, North Florida, a little town called Bascom, and my mother was from Jacksonville. I would come down to Florida in the summers to come see my grandmother. We used to call it Camp Bascom. We'd go sit there and play with pigs and all kinds of things. But there is something in the air. I mean this figuratively and literally. There's something in the air here that I feel of Florida. I feel of Miami. Like, this is, when I come out, as humid as it is, I'm like, yes, like just my skin, like, it's just like, yes, this is where you're supposed to be. So that's part of the smile. What I didn't know though, before moving here, and I didn't move here with any particular design other than that I wanted to be on the East Coast because I do so much work in Europe and the Middle East, and traveling there from San Francisco is just a non-starter. I had never felt tethered to or connected to San Francisco. It is truly a beautiful place. I have wonderful relationships there, and I'm so grateful for the time that I spent there, but I never felt like rooted in that place. I always kind of felt like, if you can imagine like a person kind of hanging out on the side of a mountain, that's kind of how I felt.
Okay.
That's kind of how I lived too, on the side of a mountain and, hanging out in San Francisco. But what lights me up is that having had the experience of San Francisco through .com, through SaaS, through all of this stuff, and seeing what created that ecosystem and how it moved from being kind of a provincial town. And I'm speaking San Francisco in particular, not Silicon Valley. Right. People know the distinction there. So seeing it being kind of like a provincial town and just kind of like the closest to Europe that we have in the United States, that kind of a thing people have said. And then seeing what happened to it, where because of this growth of technology and because SaaS in particular was so had a very thin band of allowance with respect to the type of background you had to have to be successfully implemented in those organizations, the types of universities you had to go to, the types of degrees you had to have access to, those sorts of things really attracted a certain individual to that world in San Francisco, which was fairly homogenous, right? Now we're at a different place. So I feel as though you talked about inflection points before. I feel like there's this perfect storm of like a democratization of technology, meaning that AI can allow for people to.
We haven't spoken about
We're back to AI
in half an hour of the conversation, but
I'm back to it.
Okay.
AI is a great equalizer.
Equalizer. I like
Yes.
that. Okay.
I said on a stage 2 years ago, and I was only quoting Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, who is infinitely more intelligent than I am, but I was saying what he had said, and I even attributed it to him. I said that he said that if he had children now, he would never encourage them to go into coding because the coding is going to be done through prompting and AI by 2025 is what he said. Now people are saying that it'll all probably be done that way in 2026. And don't get mad at me, engineers. I know, we still need you. It's just going to be a different level of need. But what that does is it creates access points. People are creating apps in a weekend using no code, using vibe coding, using, everything lovable and a cursor and everything else that you've got access to right now.
Agents, NHN.
It's amazing. And so here's the coolest thing, mind-boggling. Here's the coolest thing. Being in Miami, where everybody is like, we're coming, we're next, we're launching, we're doing this thing. And, Mayor Suarez was like, how can I help? And all of this stuff happening. Miami is such a cool epicenter of just cultural diversity and backgrounds, meaning not just ethnic backgrounds, but some people come from property tech, some people, or not even tech, some people come from real estate, some people come from finance, some people come from pharma, some people are retired, some people come from, Myriad Health, some people come from e-commerce. Like there is such diversity here of gender diversity involved in this, ethnic diversity, country of origin diversity, you know what I mean? You've got Latin America, you've got all these different countries. You can't just call this like one ethnicity. These people, everybody comes with different backgrounds and different experiences. This is what lights me up. So when you think about Spark and you think about the people in that room, there is an Argentinian who won, a Haitian who won, a Bahamian who won, and an African-American woman who were the top four, right? Where else would you possibly find that? You know what I mean? Miami. And with a room full of people who are just cheering everybody on, and with judges that all came from different backgrounds, and selection committee that came from different backgrounds, and that level of our opportunity to collaborate, to do something different, and to solve problems that are different problems, I think is fascinating.
Okay, in order to end,
yes,
is there something that you want to add that I haven't asked, and that you want to share with our audience?
I would just, first off, I am abundantly available. Gabby, you know this. Okay. I'm in a lot of places. Hopefully I'm not, overexposed. You let me know with respect to my brand.
No.
I don't want to be the Paris Hilton of if there is a way to connect to the source, my organization, to me personally, I always, make the metaphor of just plug into the source. There's so many things that we do. We offer a Tech Tuesdays, which we do every other Tuesday at the Center for Black Innovation in Overtown, which is an on-ramp for anyone from anywhere, no matter where you are on your technology knowledge base or trajectory, to come and either share knowledge or take something away. And it's one of those places that it's a no judgment zone. They say that of Planet Fitness. You come in there, it doesn't matter how in shape you are, whatever, you're welcome. It's exactly the same thing. Like, this is the place to come learn. We have a 501c3, which is Techknowledge, which is resident at Florida Memorial University, where we offer a B2B tech sales cohort. The goal there is to help people transition into technology careers without having to have a computer science or an engineering background, because not everybody has that sort of thing, right? We've graduated 117 people from there. Spark is a great program. We just concluded our cohort for 2025. They will still be involved, always looking for mentors, looking for investors who are interested in those companies or other companies that we work with. And the source year-round is investing in Miami, specific to Miami, local founders, local real estate. And it's a big tent project. It's like, who can we collaborate with that has the same goals, that, maybe there's little overlap of the Venn diagram, and we just augment and provide value to one another. And I'm open to any and all of those conversations.
What's the one place in Miami that you can't think you can? That
I go to just kind of get my space.
Yeah, go to.
I'm gonna not say the beach because that's just an obvious thing. I really love my balcony.
But, your balcony, there we go. I love the deck.
Right?
I have a space.
I look over the water and I watch the boats go by, and there is something. I'll share this very, very quickly. My wife just had to have her molars removed, and before she did, I guess the dentist said, just think of like your happy place. and just like the place that brings you calm. And she told me afterwards, she's like, I was just thinking of, our balcony. I was just thinking of where I sit. I was like, that's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. It has
Thank
been
you.
amazing. I think there are a lot of nuggets and clear information, not only in terms of leadership, but circling back to your curiosity and thinking and getting ways that we can solve problems faster or more efficient than what you've said. I definitely invite everybody to tap into Hilmon's
Please.
network because he's amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
being
so much
here.
for having me, Gabby. I really appreciate it. It's
I
been
appreciate
fun.
it. Okay.